Okay, so we're going to talk about the kettlebell deadlift, one of the very basic movements we need to be practicing before we can even think about doing the swings. So the goal of this is to get all this activation through your hamstrings and your glutes. It's really important that you are feeling it in those areas there, because without that, chances are it's going to be your back that's taking a lot of the stress and strain, and that's not the purpose of this. All about this activation, and then obviously over time building up more strength and more resilience in the area. So first thing I want to do is just think about that tilt. Okay? So if you watch again there, what I'm doing is pushing my hips back behind me. Knees are soft, so the knees will start to bend very slightly. But as I'm pushing my hips back, I'm keeping this arch in my back, which hopefully you can see quite clearly there. So that's the first thing you should be practicing, is that movement. The problem is that because there's no load to that, it does make it a bit tricky to actually feel what's going on around you initially. So if we then are able to tilt low enough that we can hold on to the kettlebell, or at least get fingertips to it, that can help, simply because if you try and stand up just a little bit but without lifting that kettlebell, you should feel that tension in your glutes, possibly a little bit through the hamstrings as well. So I'm going to do that one again, pushing my hips back, keeping that arch in my back, just reaching for the kettlebell, fingertips, aiming to stand tall, but without actually lifting the kettlebell, so I'm feeling all that tension in my butt. Now what we often find is that you'll end up collapsing through your upper back. So that's one of the things you can do by videoing yourself or watching yourself in the mirror as you're doing it, is it'll often go, oh, it's a bit tricky to reach that. You get to that end range from the hips and then you'll just collapse in the upper back. Now the problem then is as soon as we're collapsing through your upper back, we're then deactivating around the glutes, the hamstrings, so not really going to be getting that benefit from it. Another thing we get is that if there's limitation through the hips there, you might collapse in the lower back, so you end up rounding like this. So again then, it's all in the quads, but that in itself can also put more stress and strain through your lower back. If you think about it as being the same as with those enormous cranes that you get doing all that building work at the moment around the Santander area, is you have those huge concrete counterbalances at the back of them. And that is what your glute should be acting as, is that counterbalance. So without that counterbalance, everything's going to collapse forwards and cause no end damage. So in other words, if we're not able to activate your glutes, then your back and your shoulders are going to take a lot more of that stress and strain, and it needs to be in your butt. So if, for example, we find that actually it's that collapse in the upper back, maybe we need to alter that range of motion slightly. So if you use a yoga block here, that now means that as I'm tilting, I don't have to tilt over as much. So if I'm stuck, rather than collapsing the upper back, I can draw those shoulder blades back, push the hips back, and still feel I can hold on to the kettlebell and get that activation in here. So that's the first part of it. If you're not able to get that tension and that sensation in your glutes, then we may need to do some other work on hip and glute activation first, before we're actually ready. We need that preparation before we're ready to even start lifting with the kettlebell. Okay, so once we've got that tension, remember we're keeping that strong arch in your back, take hold of the kettlebell, make sure you've got that tension in your bum, squeeze the shoulder blades slightly together, and then standing tall. Now at the top there, what we often find is you go, oh, I'm going to breathe here, and you take all the stress off the muscles again. So it needs to be standing tall. You're deliberately squeezing your backside as you get to the top. Push the hips back. So again, all the effort is through your back, the legs and your bum. Release the grip at the bottom. Wiggle the hips around a bit if you need to get that tension in your bum. Squeeze the shoulder blades together and left. As you get more practice with that, you can keep that steady tempo. So I'm releasing the kettlebell at the bottom of each movement, which means that we've got less fatigue through forearms and upper back and shoulders, but it also means you can really focus each time on pushing the hips back and getting that tension in your bum, in the hamstrings. And repeat, like so. Okay? Last thing to be aware of that is, if you're feeling a lot more in the front of the legs, it's generally because we're allowing the knees to come further forwards. So in other words, you might stay a bit too upright and I'm doing it like that. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but the aim is to get more of the work in the back of the legs. So ideally, tilt as much as you can. And if you're struggling with that, put a comment below or send me a video and we can give you a bit of extra feedback on that.